Oh, here it is. If you don't mind, before we start,
Yep.
it's in, I just found it, it's in section, 4-10 G H. I'm sorry, H.
And what does it say?
It says, no question or proposal shall be approved unless at the election, at least 25% of the electors cast a ballot with respect to the question or proposal. So they have a 25% provision as well in Norwalk.
I doubt that we get that many people out to vote in a mayoral election.
That's, well, mayoral, maybe you get more than that, but whatever, it's a pretty high threshold.
That's a pretty high threshold, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we will we'll call the meeting to order at 6:33. Roll call here in the chambers. It's Tyler Fairburn and John Levin. Joining us on Zoom, we have Carl Dickens, Jim Clark, and Ed Camacho. I expect a couple others shortly. Do we have, for those here, a motion to accept the minutes of our April 15th, 2025 meeting?
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Jim. Any proposed revisions to the minutes?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, there are numerous seconds of motions throughout this, which need to be deleted since we don't do seconds. On page
Okay.
3, there's Mr. Dickens seconded the motion. On page 4, there was a second for the motion. Page 5, there are 2. Mr. Hempstead seconded the motion, and then also Mr. Clark seconded the motion. And I think that was all of them.
Okay. Anything else? John, did you have it?
My observation was exactly the same as Jim Clark's.
All right.
Great minds think alike.
Okay, so all in favor of accepting the minutes with the removal of any references to seconds on votes. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Public participation portion. We have nobody here with us in person. We do have one attendee on Zoom. If you are interested in participating in this portion, please raise your Zoom hand. Otherwise, we will move on. Okay. All right, so that gets us to new business. I think what we're going to do tonight, because we know we're down 2 members tonight anyway, and there were a couple others who will be joining us, but they're not here at the moment. What I would like to do is go through the new business. We might take it a little bit out of order with respect to Mr. Schmidt's time, so we can hear from him and then get him on his way. We're going to have Steve walk us through these items so that we fully understand them, clear up any questions, and then we can take a vote on these at our next meeting. This is mostly things we've discussed quite a bit already, particularly Article 10. But we'll go through these things with Steve. If anyone has any questions, let's clear them up now, and then we can vote to approve these at our next meeting. Following that, I just want to we'll touch on a couple of housekeeping items for our upcoming schedule. I think there are a few things that might need to move around for various reasons, so we'll do that at the end. But Steve, if you want to take us through, maybe start with the finance section.
Happy
We'll do that.
to do so, Mr. Chairman. Pleasure seeing everybody. So let's go to Article 10, and I'm going to ask Jared. I will pause periodically to ask Jared for color commentary, because there will be a few not substantive changes, but more visual changes in the document. So in 10-1, we break it down to say that the budget is comprised of the operating budget and the capital budget. In the next version, you're going to see that I'm just going to refer to the capital budget and the operating budget, and the definitions. We tried to define the terms up front, but as we were looking at it one more time, Jared and I were going through this, we found that there's some slight variations between the definitions. And so we're going to consolidate all the definitions in the definition section. So at our next meeting, I'll present to you new definitions for operating and capital budget and capital improvement plan as well. So you're not going to see all the language in A1 and A2. We'll just refer to those three items in the next version of the document. Jared, anything else you'd like to add to that?
No, that was it. If you wanted to, I could talk about those changes, but if you're gonna produce another document with the changes, then we'll wait to see that. So that's great.
All right. And then in subsection C4, so you remember, this is the first time you're getting to look at the whole charter, and this is a red line to the baseline charter. So this reflects the changes that we've talked about. And as you may recall, at one of our meetings, Jared had suggested that we add at the initial joint public hearing, we add the superintendent of schools, the chief financial officer of the schools, and that's what that red line shows. They are not in the current charter. That is an additional provision for the charter.
Yes.
Subsection D simply is the authority to require operating budget and capital budget information. Most of this language was in the prior charter, and this section really reflects a recodification. So there's nothing new in here. It's basically a recodification. I'm talking about D right now, is a recodification of the current charter. E is slightly different, and I'll tell you about that in a second. In this section, we're going to add some language, minor point you'll see in the next draft in D2, where it says that these folks need to submit estimates of the cost of the capital budget items pending or which should be in the judgment of the submitting entity, a department head, a chief, whatever it may be. So we're going to add the language in their judgment, what should be added in that case. And so it's a minor change, but D is current language that is in the charter. It's just been moved and reorganized for the sake of creating kind of a linear budget process. E is new language. Oh, Jared, anything to add there? I think we're okay on that.
Good.
Right. All right. E is a new section, and what this basically says, this is the date for submission. We have two different dates. Most of the department heads, all of the department heads, and the responsible officers for budgeted entities shall provide their budget information on or before December 15th, but in the case of the Norwalk Public Schools, December 31st. And that's where they submit their operating budget estimates and their capital item estimates as well. There'll be some typos. There's a little typo clarification that we'll make there in subpart 2, but there's nothing substantive that will be changed there. Section 10-2, 529, let me just take a look at this. That's again a it's a revision and merger of 10-1D1. So it's not new language. It just basically sets that the operating budget estimates shall be submitted to the mayor or the mayor's designee in accordance with the provisions up front. 530 is new, on or before the 21st of January. The CFO and the CFO of the public schools shall meet with members of the committees of jurisdiction of the council and the board of education in order to review the pre-submission budget priorities of all budgeted entities. And the joint committee shall elicit comments and ideas from members of the public during that process. This is a new provision. It's kind of a follow-up to the initial public hearing that you have in the fall as we get closer to budget submission.
Mr. Mednick, may I ask
Yes,
a
sir.
question at this point?
Of course.
In 10.2B, we see the chief financial officer and the chief financial officer of the Norwalk Public Schools. Now, do we have definitions earlier where when we see chief financial officer, it means for the city of Norwalk? Is that definition earlier somewhere to differentiate between the two, or are we just?
Let's take a look. Hold on.
Because it's clear here that they're different, obviously, but I just wondered if there was a difference.
Yeah, I mean, we refer to the CFO. The CFO really is the person who people are submitting to. We see it, I believe, first in subsection C 3, because it's the CFO of the city. We should maybe that's the way we should do it, of the city, and that way, I mean, we could repeat it just to make it clear.
Okay. That'd be helpful. Unless we had a definition somewhere that said when we say chief financial officer, we mean the chief financial officer.
Let's see if we have it. I'm happy to do that if everybody thinks that would be helpful. It might be helpful. Let me just see. I don't think we have the chief financial officer as a defined term. We do not.
We have a CFO as when in the context of in any mention of the Board of Education, do we have the CFO mentioned in connection with the Board of Education?
I believe this is the only reference.
I think this is the only
to it.
reference. Yeah.
Okay, so the CFO means the CFO of the city because there's no CFO of the Board of Ed mentioned anywhere.
We mentioned the CFO of the Norwalk Public Schools in subparagraph 4. Remember, we just added that in.
Right, that's
as a
right.
participant in that early public hearing. So,
Do you think we should put in the original definition of CFO, we should say, language that pertains to the CFO of the city unless otherwise
Yeah, unless otherwise
noted.
Stated or indicated.
Right, something like that.
well, let me just see something. Hold on.
Sure.
I think the CFO is probably in the department head section. Hold on.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's probably defined there. Let me just take a quick look. Departments.
I think if it's there, we're good to go.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's one of the big ones. I think it's the first. No, corp counsel's first, then finance functions. Chief financial officer is defined in 8-4B.
Okay.
So I think if we simply, at the time of the adoption of this provision of the charter, the division chief is the chief financial officer. The chief financial officer is responsible for the administration of the financial management of the city. So I think we're okay. Is that all right?
Yeah, as long as you feel we're all right, then I'm good with it. It seemed to me that we could need clarification if it wasn't elsewhere. So it seems like it may be elsewhere.
It is. It's defined in the department head section.
Cool.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. It was good clarification. So then we get to 10-3, which is submission. And the only change here is the mayor is now submitting the operating budget both to the Board of Estimate and Taxation and the council on the same date. It used to be 2 different dates. We've consolidated so they both receive the operating budget on the 15th of February.
Let me ask you a question about that.
Yeah.
Typically, when the budget was presented to the Board of Estimate, it was literally presented like in a PowerPoint. Is that going to be the case on the same day for both entities now?
I don't know the answer. I mean, it's simply.
What does it mean?
The charter
to be presented then.
Well, it does
It's
say honor
submit.
before,
Submit.
Ed.
Oh, submit. So what is that?
It
What
means
does that mean?
physically
Because we don't
submit.
meet, because we don't necessarily meet on the same day. So is that really more of a fiction?
Yeah, I think
You would
it's
get the intention was that you would get a copy of it. Either electronic or hard copy, and that it would be followed by a presentation at some point, like we do now. It would follow because even now, you receive the budget first, and then you get a presentation of it at a later date.
And as a practical matter, the presentation is unless there's someone that's spending their free time looking at budgets, it's as a practical matter, it's when we are presented with the budget anyway, when that.
This is
Well, that
just the
would be-
submission date, Ed. If
Right.
it's submitted by electronically, it goes to the clerk, then it's considered submitted. When you start examining it is a different issue. This is just a common date for submission,
Okay,
all right?
Yep.
There are no changes in any of the other sections in the operating budget until we get to subsection C of 10-5. I think it's a minor, it's a clarification that any grants, limit on total appropriations, new reference in the title, any grants from private, state, federal sources received after the adoption of any maximum limit on total appropriations by the council are exempted from the maximum limit. So it's a clarification of that section. Subsection section 10-6, we change the word alterations to propose changes to the estimates. And I think we eliminated make additional appropriations because it was redundant, because the changes would be, in effect, additional appropriations. I think
What was
that's
it?
language.
I'm sorry, what was the change of the word? What was the change of alterations?
10-6,
Yeah,
the Board of Estimate must hold one or more meetings on or before the March 30th, including at
Yep.
least one public hearing at which it shall hear from all parties who desire to be heard relative to any set of alterations, proposed changes in the estimates.
alterations, comma, proposed changes, because, well.
Yeah.
All
Taking out
right,
alterations.
okay.
The alterations is removed,
Alterations removed, it's proposed changes in lieu of
proposed
alterations.
changes.
replaced rather by proposed changes.
Is there a reason for that? I'm just curious.
The language is a little more clear, I think.
The same
I
thing? Oh,
think the
okay.
language is clear for the public myself with this change.
For the public,
Yeah.
I got you, okay.
Yeah, I think proposed changes is a little clear for the public to understand as
I
opposed to
got
an
you, that makes
alteration.
sense, yeah, that makes sense.
Are we
not-
keeping alterations in the next sentence though?
No, it should be, I would say that thereafter the board should make any increases and decreases. I mean, or, well, I
Or
suppose.
leaving, or leaving the same,
Yeah,
and that's where alteration sort of fits like encompasses the whole thing, but.
yeah, I suppose in that case, alterations would be fine.
And is it increases or decreases, or increases and decreases? Which,
Or it could be
Alterations,
none, or it could be
increases.
none.
which?
Or none,
Alterations, increases, and
and or
decreases.
yeah, I would do and or in
Okay.
there.
Yeah, yeah.
Then there are no changes in 10-7, 10-8.
Oh, one more thing, Counselor.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yes, sir.
Back to 10-6, at the last one, we said proposed operating budget, and then we're removing and make the additional. Do we need the word appropriations after proposed operating budget?
Well, it would be make alterations, increases and or decreases in the mayor's proposed operating budget. I think you can take the word appropriations out.
I think it doesn't, we don't need that, right?
Yeah. Yep,
Right.
Okay,
I would take that out.
thank you.
Good catch.
Yeah, I just got a question procedurally about two things. One is under the 10-5, 125, the exemption of grants from maximum. So what this is saying basically, if the federal grants only says, oh, we're awarding within the next 6 months additional money for roads, or whatever, using as an example, that even though the council has passed the cap, this now gets treated as an exemption? Question mark?
I believe.
I'm trying to, how do you rectify this if it happens after the fact?
Think that's what it's meant to address, is something that happens after the fact. So if you're in the middle of a fiscal year and there's a grant that we're to receive from whatever level of government, it doesn't, it takes out the onerous step of having to get approval to increase the cap, and I think in most cases, those grants would be a one-time source. And so you wouldn't want that to become part of the base of your budget. You wouldn't want that to increase your base budget and be counted as part of the limit.
So you treat that influx of a grant, just for instance, as additional funding. So it's not rolled into the budget, so it's like
Oh,
pound
yeah.
money. I'm just trying to understand that procedurally, if your council says this year is all you can spend this year, the Board of Estimate,
Well-
puts it together. How, I'm just wondering procedurally in this, how would you treat that then?
Well, it's exempt. And it's in the current charter. This is language from the current charter.
Okay.
So it's not a change. We cleaned up some of the internal language in it, but it's not a change in the concept of the exemption of grants from maximum taxation, I think for the reasons Jared indicated.
And it seems very necessary that we don't have complications from additional money coming in, and also we have to adjust our, our budget, so it makes sense.
Right,
Yeah, presumably
we wouldn't
the-
want to limit getting that grant because of the cap, because of the
Yeah,
spending
understood.
limit.
We don't want the cap to be a bar, but and that's the reason it's probably been in the charter maybe since 1913. I don't know where it goes back to. Yeah, 1913. This provision goes back to 1913. So it's been there for a long time. Now, the protection you have, Doug, is that if things are working as they should, most of these monies are going to run through the legislative body anyhow.
Right.
You're not going to apply for a grant without going to the council. They're the only body that can bind the community for multiple years, and it may be true of federal and state aid as well, depending on the nature of the aid.
Yeah, I know they anticipate a certain amount of outside money coming into the cities outside of real, property taxes. That's usually anticipated in the budget. Some of them are pretty normal. I know how they would have to cover that if they failed to, but okay. I just want to, and I'm sorry to regress here a little. I kind of asked this question about something else 2 weeks ago. On 10-5. So it almost happened. What happens if the council by the February 28th does not pass a cap? There's no relief valve in there. Does that mean you do not have a budget? Because if I remember right, was it 2 years ago, Ed, that council voted and they,
I think there was an extension that was granted somehow.
okay. I'm just trying to find out because, it's not addressed in charter, never has been. But if it came to fruition that you couldn't get 8 votes to get a budget passed,
Right.
because there are too many factions happening, what happens?
I would think it would just be left up to referendum at that point, but I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure what the
Well-
other option would be.
Yeah, that's
I'll give
again.
you
This is
my experience with it not quite happening that way. When Alex Knopf was mayor, they hadn't come up with a budget yet. They were still working on it. So what he recommended was pass the budget of the previous year. There was no increase at all. And then with understanding, and he obviously had enough votes to do it, came back and increased the cap. All right. So I'm just wondering though, if you get and can't even pass a cap, we probably should have some language in there in case of fire, break glass, kind of thing. I don't know, that the recommendation for the mayor passed
Well,
on. I don't know.
the simplest way to do it is the mayor proposes a budget. In effect, that is a cap. The mayor's putting a cap on his proposed budget. And if the council cannot
Right.
provide a cap, then it would be the mayor, it would be the mayor's mayor's effectively setting the cap.
So,
I think that's a fair interpretation for failure to do so, but you may want to clarify that.
I want to clarify that.
Jared-
The other option is to charge common council members $150 a day.
You like the stick, huh? Well, I mean, it should something be just simply inserted, if the council's not able to reach 7/28, they have 7 days to do so, otherwise the mayor's recommended budget
It's
becomes.
never happened, probably because there's never seemingly an option or a viable alternative, but I'm afraid if we give them one, if we give ourselves an option, it might be exercised at some point.
Okay, all right. So.
So I don't know, what do you, yeah.
I'm just saying, if
point.
it happens, it happens. A lot of stuff's never supposed to happen.
Well,
Supreme
but
Court's getting a
Steve,
lot
what
of
happened
cases
under,
lately, isn't it?
what
Not
happened under
supposed to
Mayor
happen.
Knopp was extra legal, to be honest with you. If that's what they did. I mean, if you don't adopt a budget by a certain period of time, there's a default and you do go with the budget from the prior year. If you don't.
But I think that should be specifically stated, just to be clear.
That's what I'm trying to
It
get at.
should
It
be, yeah. So what do you want to do? You want to add language here?
Yeah, just,
Does that, Doug, does that give you your,
but then the common
Break
council
glass.
sort of defaults, yeah, so they default on record
Right, and they can go back and increase it at a later date if they need.
by
But I'm just
2/3
saying there
vote or
should be a-
whatever.
Thank you.
Is there language that's used in other towns to address this concern?
No. Maybe in small towns, but in the larger cities, the legislative body's not setting a cap, they're approving line items in a budget. So this is a very unusual circumstance. And Stamford has a totally different circumstance because the mayor proposes, the Board of Finance, their equivalent of the Board of Estimate, reduces or keeps it the same. And then the Board of Reps gets to keep it the same or reduce it. And so there's no cap set. They can only take away from the mayor's budget. So this is unusual. There may be in the smaller towns an equivalent, but it seems to me the fair game is it's like overriding a veto. If you can't override a veto, the mayor gets his or her budget, is what it comes down to. So if you can't set a cap, the mayor gets their cap. Okay,
Okay.
so I'll add that language in.
Yeah, I think
All
so.
right. Now, let me get a second here. Gotta do different colored Post-its for that. Okay, very good. Anything else, Doug? Or Mr. Vice Chair?
Not our operating.
All right. So no changes through basically the end of, actually in section 10, there is a minor change in 10-8C. The Board of Estimate may fix the time or times when tax approved by it shall become due and payable, and may divide the altered tax levy and make the same payable in 2 or more installments as authorized by the general statutes.
Did that happen
And then
this
in-
year?
I'm sorry,
Did that happen this year?
I don't know the answer.
Does anybody know? I don't either.
no,
Did yes, it did.
It did?
Yes.
Then in the next section, 10-10A, we're deleting the reference to a special meeting called for that purpose. The Board of Estimate can have a meeting, no matter, you can do this at a regular meeting. It would just have to be posted appropriately. And I think we just took out the special meeting requirement, limiting this action to a special meeting.
all right.
In B, again, we took out the special meeting requirement. That's the main change there.
Yeah.
Then the big changes are in the capital budget. You'll see the sections are parallel. 10-11A is similar to the opening section in the operating budget in terms of the submission of estimates. Then the mayor's proposed capital budget and capital improvement plan are submitted by February 15th of each year. It includes the CFO's report, which is listed below in 10-12. It includes an estimate of the amounts requested by each of the budget entities and any other information requested by the Board of Estimate, the Planning and Zoning Commission, or the Common Council. There's a notice requirement and publication requirement. There's a public hearing requirement. The numbering got a little goofy here. I think it's subsection D is the public hearing requirement, which is
All right. Mhm.
in the current charter. It's 10-21. It was just moved around a little bit. The CFO report is current language with a couple of modifications where we use defined terms instead of the current terminology. And the report has to also the CFO has to send the report to the department heads responsible for each of the budget entities that have submitted requests for inclusion in the budget.
I'm sorry, I
10
lost you.
dash-
What number are we? Can you?
10-12, the CFO's
Thank you,
report.
thank you. Okay, I'm there. I'm there.
Steve, I'm sorry, just
Then
quickly,
send
on 10-11, the public hearing requirements.
Yeah,
Is that supposed to read like that within the, and then parameters under subsection D?
well,
Should
the D should be in front of public
Public
hearing
hearing,
requirements.
yeah.
Okay,
And in the clean version, it does, it's some kind of anomaly when you did the red line.
I got it, okay,
Yeah, when you see the clean version, it will be,
okay,
it works. It's weird. I don't know how,
Right.
sometimes how these things
no,
work.
that's fine.
Yeah, no, it's-
10-13 is the budget, is the planning and zoning participation. So we broke it down by the different functions. We make it clear in here that the sole function of P and Z is to ensure that the capital budget item in the proposed capital budget. This is a change that Jared and I talked about. I'm looking over at Jared this morning. That we're not requiring them to look at the entire plan, the 10-year plan. The focus of this review really is the budget, which is year one of the 10-year plan. Right, Jared?
That's right. Yep.
And yeah, and then basically their task is not to look at planning considerations outside of alignment and compliance or consistency with the POCD, the city's plan of conservation and development. That's really the function of the Planning and Zoning Commission. So they don't get involved in anything more than that.
yeah, it's clear. Good.
We made that very clear. Then they transmit the budget. They transmit the capital budget, not the, we're going to be taking the language out on the improvement plan and the POCD report by the 5th of March. The mayor cannot include any new capital budget items without first submitting them to the P&Z for determination in accordance with that section. So if there's anything that new that comes up and the mayor wants to seek an amendment, while this is before the council, they'd have to go to an expedited process through P&D or P&Z before they do it. So you can't circumvent that process. They do need to take a look at the POCD. Mayoral review, the mayor reviews it. It sends the capital budget to the Board of Estimate and the council, again, on March 15th. The Board of Estimate adopts a written series of recommendations by an affirmative vote of a majority of the entire membership of the board, and submits that report to the council. I had some language in green that I thought might have been redundant, but Jared and I were talking about it today, and it may not be. So further recommendations, the transmittal shall incorporate recommendations as the mayor, the P and Z commission, and the CFO may make. So the Board of Estimate really should take those things into account and state their opinion with regard to those issues. They have a public hearing requirement in B, which I think is new. I think they do it anyhow, but I think it's this language is new, because I think it was required of all the entities to do it, but we decided to put it in each section. And then they transmit their report, their recommendations to the council. Now, there's language at the end of that section that I'm trying to remember what the source of it was. There was some question that was raised. I don't know whether one of the council members raised it, and I put language in here in response to that. But as I've read it over, and I don't know what Jared thinks about this, it looks very draconian. The council is not required to consider any recommendations of the Board of Estimate and Taxation if not in writing or transmitted on or before April 1st of each year, which is their transmittal date. I think it should be said that if they don't get it in on time, or they don't put it in writing and people don't like it, then the council will take it into the council will give it whatever due consideration it's entitled to. So I'll leave it up to you as to whether you want me to take that language out or leave it in. It's very punitive language. I don't know if it's historically, yeah.
I think historically, I don't think it's ever been presented without, it's ever been presented. It's always been presented in writing, because how else would you present it? So I think that this notion that it has, or is likely to be, or can be, or has been presented not in writing is sort of a little fictitious, because I don't know how else the Board of Estimate presents anything. So, but I think it should certainly not be as punitive, and it should be that, because I just can't imagine a situation where it wouldn't be presented in writing. If for whatever reason it's not, then it should be given the due, whatever, a due consideration it deems. I just don't know where this comes from, because in my experience, Jim, I think you were chair for a while.
Yeah.
I don't think anything is presented to the Common Council that's not in writing and signed off by the chair,
Right.
or by each member of the Board of Estimate and Taxation.
Yeah, Steve, when we talked about it this morning, I think we were considering getting rid of the first mention of the word of written recommendations. Get rid of the first word written, and get rid of that highlighted portion that you mentioned.
Oh, I
Just to be
thought it was
to be
just the
consistent.
highlighted portion. I think that people wanted to emphasize that they need to be written. So
I'm not sure how else a recommendation is communicated.
Right.
yeah,
I mean, is it a phone call? I mean, I'm not sure how that works.
A Zoom
public
PowerPoint.
testimony. Yeah, the public testimony, whatever.
What is the concern about there being guardrails on it? I don't understand that. Just, kind of having, baseline. It should be presented in a written format.
I think it is
Joe's-
presented in a written format. I don't know how else it's ever been presented.
Yeah, to Joe's point, I think we have
Edward-
things throughout that are,
I don't see it.
assumed that they're written.
I don't
It's gotta
see
be
a
in
problem.
writing, but
We don't say it every
I
time.
don't see a problem with this language.
What's that?
well, it doesn't require to be written though. Right? That's what we're talking about.
But the council doesn't have to consider it if it's not written.
No,
I mean,
yeah,
But it's never not written. I don't
Exactly.
understand where that
Yeah, I
comes
know.
from.
agree.
There's no other place within this,
Although-
within section 10 where it refers to specifically something being in writing. I don't believe, Steve. I think it's all just recommendations.
Am I correct in that there are many references to things being transmitted or sent throughout the charter where you don't explicitly use the word written, but it's understood?
Yeah, I think that language is kind of offensive because it's like,
It's almost
they're
like
not,
mistrust.
they don't require, they don't need to take any action if it's not in writing. It's like, well, where does that come from? It's like, when did you stop beating your spouse? It's like, it's always been in writing. Like, I don't, like, why
So
leaving it in there?
perhaps because of the age that we live in now, where government is bringing surprises and creating new paths to govern. I'm just looking at the chaos and novelty of the current federal government. I don't see the harm of this language.
Well, just say, for whatever, following approval, the Board of Estimate and Taxation is required to forward in writing the same to the, I mean, how else is it forwarded? I don't understand. It's an email, right? If it's a letter, it's an email, it's usually signed, or it's a memo, it's initialed by the chair of the Board of Estimate, or it's signed by all 6 members or 7 members. It's just, it's almost like a non sequitur.
So
So
what's your pleasure?
accountability is not important? I'm sorry.
No. Accountability is important, but making stuff up out of whole cloth is confusing. It's like, obviously, it's going to be transmitted to the Common Council. It's going to be transmitted. It's not by carrier pigeon. It's not by a phone call. It's not by, smoke signals. It's transmitted in writing because there is no other way to transmit anything nowadays.
Well,
May I ask Mr.
no,
Mendick?
there is. You can just do it by recitation or, something like that.
Well,
I mean, I agree with you. I just don't see the harm in this language.
You can dictate to Telesco what the recommendation is and but then Telesco then have it be in the minutes, and somehow that's still not transmitted because something in the minutes is still not transmitted. It's just recorded. But how do you transmit it? You have to transmit it in some form,
Right.
in some official form.
Ed, I agree with you, Ed, because to me, the minutes is a perfect example. You vote your next meeting on the minutes, whether they're accurate or not. So you can't transmit something you're really not voting on. The transmittal is supposed to be, we're kind of, as a collective group, this is what we're putting together. It may not be unanimous vote, but it had a majority vote behind it, and here's the thinking behind it. Maybe it's, it's just way, otherwise, how do you transmit it? I mean, what are you gonna get? Here's a piece of paper we worked on. Thanks very much. Have a nice day.
So it sounds to me, just to keep this moving, like we need to get rid of the punitive sentence for sure. Is there consensus agreement on that?
Which is
The yellow sentence at the end.
Yeah,
Which
but
is the
I
punitive
also
sentence.
believe that they're not required to take action if it's not transmitted in writing. I don't think that sentence belongs there. It seems to presuppose that has ever happened.
All right, that's what I just asked. Is there consensus that should come out?
Oh,
So
that
that's the-
sentence.
that's
Yeah,
the- that's
right.
the
As opposed to.
Okay, that's
swapping it or
all I was
making it
asking.
punitive. Yeah.
Yeah. With regard to the written, and I did not make this up, I believe it came up during meetings with council members. If it's simply recommendations or written recommendations.
There's no harm in saying writing, but.
Yeah, I have no problem with that.
All right, very good. Then I'll take that sentence out at the end of C.
And does the Common Council then have to provide the Board of Ed a written cap? It's kind of silly.
Yeah, I just have a quick question.
Written in blood. Yes.
The quick question is there seems to be an awful lot of concern for different various reasons about having something in writing. What's the problem with it having something in writing?
There's
And
no
just
problem.
because
There's
it's
no problem with it. It's just that it's always been the case. It's just that there's this sense on the some members of the current Common Council that apparently they received something that wasn't in writing. I probably most recently, but that I do not believe that has ever occurred.
It's almost like saying we should have our conversation orally.
Right. Well, that's there. We can have a conversation in writing, but
or by hands.
You should never have a conversation on a text. That's just.
That's true.
Never.
That's pretty good.
That's very dangerous.
Never.
Okay,
Good point.
never.
Well, I mean,
Um,
given the fact that, I hear what you're saying about the history and it's never been done, doesn't mean that it couldn't be done in the future as people, places and things will change. But-
True.
But I just, to me, having something in writing, quite honestly, particularly if it has to do with the direction of the government and the charter, I have no problem with it. I think it should be in writing.
Yeah, and we
So
have
the
that.
the written language is staying in. We're taking out the punitive language, Carl.
I understand that, but I just want to be clear on the other part.
All right.
I don't disagree with you. I just, it's a solution in search of a problem, but okay.
Moving right along.
All right. E is the exemption language, which I think is current language 576. Actually, it's just the resolution of the Board of Estimate is exempt from any referendum requirement. That was not clear. And since it's simply a recommendation, why should there be a referendum on it? So that was kind of I didn't put it as a Scrivener's edit, but I do think it makes sense. Then the adoption of this section, we've talked about this section a lot in 10-16. You recall that the Common Council may approve, reject, or reduce, and we had or reinstate in there. And we were trying to figure out what reinstatement was. Then we finally figured out that the Board of Estimate does have the ability to transfer funds from the capital budget to the operating budget. And so we limit their reinstatement authority to move that money back into the capital budget if they choose to do that. So so reinstatement, which no one understood, connects to that section, and that's all it does.
Got it.
We add the public hearing I'm sorry, anybody?
No, I wanted to, going back to section A, I wanted to, adoption of resolution, I wanted to offer some language change there, which will certainly start a conversation.
10-16A.
All right.
15A.
16A?
Oh, 15A.
Oh, 15 or 16A?
The adoption of resolution.
Adoption of the resolution by the Board of Estimate and Taxation. I'm not sure exactly the exact language, but where it says the board set forth its written recommendation to the mayor's proposed capital budget and set a cap. And then that language would also pop up under AG.
Not following where we are.
We're back at 10-15A.
Thank you,
Correct.
Counselor. Thank you.
Adoption of resolution.
It was gonna be a problem once they separated all these things instead of keeping them apart. In other words, the language I'm looking for is Board of Estimate makes its recommendations that it normally has and sets a cap. That's my intent. I don't have a problem with that.
So you're recommending add that language, Doug, and sets a cap?
Yes. Set the cap, the capital spend.
And caps are currently set by whom?
Board of Estimate and Taxation.
The
Okay,
caps are, the current language of the charter does not provide that with respect to the capital budget, the Board of Estimates sets a cap.
right.
That's not in the charter.
Yeah.
I mean, that's certainly been the understanding and the practice, but that's not in the charter. So that would
No,
be.
that's why I'm offering to put it in the charter, since it was a
Yeah.
practice and I'm not, that doesn't seem to be followed anymore.
Yeah,
I expressed my
agree with
concerns
Doug.
at last meeting, so I figured this round around and trying, since we're doing it. I'm putting a motion on the table to allow whatever wordsmithing it's needed for the Board of Estimate and Taxation to set a fiscal cap for the capital budget.
and then how is that cap overridden? if it's to be overwritten, how does that occur?
Does it need to be overridden?
Well,
Well, it may need to be overwritten, but how would that occur if it did?
well, the only way it can be overwritten on the cap that the council sets is the council itself can increase the budget, but it doesn't obligate the Board of Investment Taxation to spend it.
On the operating side, the budget is set by the cap is set by the Common Council. The Board
I
of
got
Adjustment
that.
can recommend a higher number,
Right.
and that then requires a 2/3 vote of the Common Council. So if the
Oh.
Board of Estimate sets a cap on the capital side,
Right.
and the Common Council wants to increase that cap, then presumably the Board of Estimate
The estimate by 2/3 of a vote. can
of the common,
increase
of the
cap
Board of
budget.
Estimate and Taxation, all right, I mean, it's, yeah, I mean, that's, I suppose
Well,
that's,
Obviously, they're two different budgets and budget streams, but shouldn't they have a similar language?
I kind of think that with respect to the capital side, which is long-term investment side, I think that the Board of Estimate really should do what the Common Council, with the charter currently says it should do, which is to recommend, and the Common Council then decides. I mean, at the end of the day, this is the only Common Council, or one of the few Common Councils in the state, that does not have budget, like not line item budgetary authority. It seems to me that to take effectively their line item budgetary authority on the capital side,
No, I'm not
which
changing
is
line
the
item.
thing that
Just
they
saying.
have currently, would be basically to completely neutralize the Common Council.
Yeah, but I don't, you're not saying that, are you, Doug? You're not,
I'm not saying line item, Vito, I'm just saying they set a cap, as was traditionally interpreted for 50 years or whatever, 60 years. The council always followed and was advised to follow by previous corporation councils that the budget of the set by the Board of Education, that the council could not spend more than what they budgeted for. And now it's been interpreted that they can spend more than what is recommended by the Board of Education. And
Right.
I'm reflecting my thoughts and my experiences.
But they
personally,
can't.
That I think a cap, as was traditionally done before, it's not a line item. The council can move the money away anywhere it wants within that time frame. And you're right, we should have the same strategy on how to change it if they want to add more money in, as what the council has, put it with the Board of Investment and Taxation.
I would,
Terrible for me to say, but I have doubts long-term. I've seen a lot of these cities that we used to compare our bond ratings to others. That
But they-
system doesn't work well.
There's also already effectively a cap. If you look at 10-16A, the council can't increase the mayor's proposed capital budget. They can only approve it, reject it, or reduce it.
Right.
So that effectively is a cap.
You're right.
How do
yeah.
you cap over the cap? That's,
Yeah.
I think
But
that's
you-
one of the reasons it's never been in the charter, because there is a cap. The mayor
Yeah.
proposes the cap.
In 16A, it basically says that, right? Because you can't, yeah.
and the Board of
Yeah,
Estimate and
crazy.
Taxation could recommend something less, but ultimately,
They can't even go higher than the mayor's.
or they
cap
can even go
either.
higher,
So-
right? But
Well,
ultimately, it should
They
be.
can't because the council doesn't have the ability.
Oh, that's right. The
to-
council can,
yeah.
right, that's exactly right. So
So
there
the
is a
mayor
cap in
effectively
place.
sets the cap is what it comes
Right.
down to.
Right. And I think for long-term investment in the city, I think it's pretty sound. I mean, the Board of Estimate has line item veto on the operating budget year to year, but I think in terms of long-term investments in the city, I think that's purely a legislative function and an elected function, it seems to me.
Hey Doug, given the language in 1016A, does that assuage you a bit about not having the term
I'm
cap?
sorry, what's
earlier?
section 16A, you said?
1016A kind of deals with the cap issue without saying it. So
yeah,
I'm wondering if that assuages you from not having to use that language earlier.
Never should.
Okay.
No,
So,
but it does, you're right, the 1016 adoption of capital budget sort of says that.
this printed copy.
Now,
ends at-
what page, you know what page at the bottom it's on?
So ten
Well, on
sixteen,
mine,
What
it's
page
page
is it
one
on?
thirty-three. 133.
Okay, thanks, that makes my life. I took these
These ended,
apart.
it ends at 132. We don't have a printed copy. That goes past 132, which is
Oh, we don't have it.
10:15. Yeah.
see that, Doug?
No, we don't, I don't have page.
You want to
133.
read that, Counselor, for?
I'll be happy to. So 10-16A reads, upon receipt of the recommendations of the Board of Estimate and Taxation, the council may approve, reject, or reduce any item in the mayor's proposed capital budget or reinstate proposed transfers. Typo, let me just, I'm sorry, I just noticed the typo. Transfers under section 10-15D above by a majority vote of the council within the maximum limits of the capital budget established by the mayor. I forgot I added that language. So
Yeah,
the mayor sets the cap.
yeah.
Okay.
So that essentially gives us the cap. That's the cap language.
Yeah. I mean,
The
you know,
council has line item authority, but they can't raise the cap.
Right.
Yeah. I think for the Board of Estimate to have that much authority over both parts of the budget, especially one that involves long-term vision, and I think electoral more than a year on a year-to-year basis, and there's an argument that can be made that the Board of Estimate has too much authority in that regard. I think to take that other authority from the Common Council, number one, is never going to get past the Common Council once this report is presented to them. But I think it's really sort of, I think it's not appropriate in this instance.
Has everybody read D? Where it says transfers to the operating budget?
1016D? Wait,
Yeah,
Which
15D.
1015D.
Because the one we're talking about right now, 1016, it refers actually back to the language in D.
Well,
Yeah, I explained that earlier,
We have operated that way for many years. So 10D is nothing new in terms of.
It's
how-
common language, but what I explained earlier is we didn't understand what reinstatement was. And
Right.
so if the Board of Finance was to move something from the capital budget to the
Oh, right.
to the operating budget, the council has the ability to reinstate that. That is still within the mayor's cap, but it can be reinstated.
If it's been
That's-
moved, it could be put back. Yes.
Correct. Now, it seems to me, if the Board of Estimate recommends or moves it out into the operating budget, it's probably going to have a significant savings on long-term debt obligations. So it's highly unlikely that they'd reinstate it, but again, it might be an interpretive battle between the bodies. But remember, we were Jared and I were had competing reinstatement provisions, trying to make sense of the term, and neither of us could make sense of the term. But then when I saw this section, I realized if they can take something out, the council should have the ability to reinstate that. And I'm assuming that that's what the reinstatement provision was meant to address in this.
And if
So-
something is taken out of the capital budget and moved to the operating budget, with that would be for the operating budget for the next fiscal year that hasn't yet been
I would think I think it's probably, my guess is, since the budgets are on a parallel track, it would be on the operating budget that is on the
For
same
that
track
year,
as the
for
capital
that year.
budget. Yeah,
okay,
same, yeah.
that
So
gets big.
the trains are going down the track and somebody's throwing something from one train to the other.
Right.
And then the council says, no, we want it back on this train. That's all. I mean,
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that gives, I think that's an appropriate balance of authority, I think.
And they could put it back on that train, Stephen, as long as it doesn't go above the cap.
Doug,
It
Doug
can't go
made-
above the cap. It's something that was in the mayor's budget, which set the cap. And
Right,
so therefore it would be within the cap.
so you could do, on the books, you could do interchangeable places where that money resides, but you can't go above the cap.
It would lower by definition the capital cap. I mean, the capital number, not the cap, because the mayor sets the cap. But
It could, yes,
it would create some pressure on the operating side.
correct.
Yeah, the assumption is that the Board of Estimate would only do it if it was affordable.
Yep.
And presumably would save some money on long-term bonding and long-term capital obligations.
Years ago, we did that. Doug may remember we took money from Board of Ed side and put it into operating budget as we were trying to deal with, well, there was a lot more tension between the Board of Education side and the city side in those days, and that was a way to begin to rein in some of the expenses. Ed, were you there at that time?
When was this again?
Oh, gosh, it was probably under Moshe.
Oh, no, I wasn't there under Moshe.
Okay.
I started under Rilling.
Okay, yeah. And
So what did we decide here? Doug, are you still think we should set the cap, but the Board of Estimates should set the cap?
All right, I'm trying to match things, and we don't have the one page at chat, so I'm gonna go back to the regular charter, 10 dash. Dash 12, 10 dash 12, 10 dash 15, which is where we were, right?
yeah,
We have the language presently says the council may approve, reject, reduce, or reinstate, and that was the big subject of discussion. Any item in the proposed capital budget by majority vote of the common council. And that's where I thought the council had the ability to raise the amount of the capital budget. Because if the mayor recommended a budget, all right, and so if Harvard Public Works asked for $1 million and the mayor only approved $500,000 and took the 500 out the bottom line. Well, the way I read this, the council can put that $500,000 back in.
The mayor sets the
Because-
cap though in the other provision, right?
It doesn't, well, that's what I'm trying to figure out, because it says on receipt
But
of the.
you're
rec-
reading the current
taxation.
language. The new language limits it only to those items transferred out. Reinstatement, you can't have the Director of Public Works circumventing the mayor.
No,
coming to the council.
no, what I'm saying, I'm trying to go through this, and I don't have page 133, so what I'm basically just want clarity on, the way I read this. Everybody gets the mayor submits a budget, it goes to planning and zoning, they're supposed to do their thing, goes to Board of Estimate and Taxation, they do their thing, it goes on to the council. All right? The
Yeah.
mayor's proposed capital budget to the operating budget. All I'm saying is the department requests money and it shows up in a line. I mean, and several here know the plan, unless something radically changed. All right, department heads usually traditionally submit capital budgets that far exceed the ability for the city to bond. But they'll put it in there. So the mayor may say, well, the $1 million Department of Public Works had for, and the planning and zoning thought was a good idea, and Board of Estimate thought it was a good idea. All right. Doesn't matter is what we're saying. Because it's
Well, but
what
you're
the mayor has submitted for the budget. So if the mayor, they thought it was $1 million, and the other one, Planning and Zoning thinks $1 million, Board of Estimate thinks $1 million, but the mayor said it's 500,000. Does the council have the right to reinstate another 500,000?
Well, but you're conflating the cap with individual line items. So if I think the common council stays within the mayor's cap,
Well, it doesn't, that's what I'm saying. It doesn't.
then they can move around pieces as they wish, right?
So I'm sorry, could you go back to the section you said that it says the council cannot increase the cap of the mayor again?
No, Section 10-16A says upon receipt of the recommendations, the council may approve, reject, or reduce any item in the mayor's proposed capital budget or reinstate any proposed transfers under 10-15D above by a majority vote of the council within the maximum limits of the capital budget established by, I'm going to say proposed by the mayor. Or I could say established by the mayor. It says it right there. You can't raise the
So-
mayor's cap.
So Stephen, I have a question.
Yeah.
What if you took the language in 1016A,
And
moved it closer to 1015, so that if somebody was reading 1015 and they had the same question, which is legitimate, that Doug has, instantly the next paragraph is going to answer that question, which would be the language in 1016A.
Well, it's 2 paragraphs below it.
Yeah, it's
Carl.
not far.
D.
Yeah,
It's
but that's,
literally,
but
it's, this is
I don't
in the-
disagree with you. I'm just trying to make it easier. That's all. I hear you, but I just,
I don't know. The language seems clear as the noonday sun on the cloudless sky to me, but
oh,
you know.
it's not the language. It's about whether or not somebody actually sees it following 1015 or they don't.
So what you're saying is move it up to where E is, because that's just below D. It's literally one section below the section that it references.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying. And I understand what you're saying.
But that's a different section of this is the budget adoption
Right.
paragraph. So it belongs in the budget adoption section, not in the Board of Finance section.
Okay, well, that's why I asked the question.
Yeah, now we could, in D, make a reference to 10-16A if we want.
I would do that if anything. I wouldn't move it, but if, I guess if a
Right.
reference makes it clearer, because we did that in one of the other sections in 10, we just looked at it, it's like referring to 10, 12 below.
Yeah, you could do that.
Yeah, you could do
That
that.
I'll do.
Or it's not.
That I could do. That makes sense.
Yep.
Because the cap is set by the mayor. It's still, keep in mind that this line item authority they have is very constrained. It's talking about approving, rejecting, or reducing. It doesn't talk about realigning or anything like that, or altering. The council may have something to say about it, but that's the current language. And we didn't change the current language except for the containment of the reinstatement authority.
Correct.
So it's a pretty constrained power that they have.
Yep.
This, is,
Was there a motion on the table? We don't need
I
a
didn't make a
second.
motion, I wanted to discuss the item, I didn't move it. But, I'm making a motion to amend, I didn't say that, I thought it was better that we put out
Right.
discussion before we get into any of
Could
that.
you- Well, if we made a motion to do what Tyler just suggested, would that be okay?
Well, I don't think that was a motion, but yeah, I think that was a.
No, I'm saying we turned that into a motion.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't
Well-
realize that it was a.
Well, yeah, at the end of the day, I think Steve is going to write all this stuff up and present it at the next
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah, that was my understanding. I don't know that we need any motions to do any of this
Yeah,
now.
let's,
I mean, it's a
let's have our
discussion for
counselor
future.
As long as
action.
there's a consensus, I think there's.
Yes,
As long as you get directed and have consensus of this group.
Right, right.
I felt since no one was throwing anything at me, that there was consensus. I thought
Yeah.
that.
Well,
That's
would we need to
understood.
vote on the consensus of the group? I think
No.
everybody would agree, but
I think
I don't
when
know that
we're
we need to
done with
vote
this
on
I think
whole
unless there's an
process-
objection, I think we all
Yeah,
agree.
if anyone doesn't
I agree.
agree, let us know now, but we don't need to vote on that. Okay.
All
okay.
right, then subsection D is another public hearing requirement for the council. And then 10-17 B,
We don't have it.
We don't
have
It's online.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
looking for it online
And G's all new
Agenda
language.
packet, it's on
and I've looked.
It's on the
there.
online packet, it's page 147
47 of the
on the
PDF.
online packet, bottom of the page.
and I believe this is language that came from Jared in 10-17 B. This is on termination or abandonment of
Yeah, this is
capital.
sunset language that we discussed, I think, a couple
okay.
meetings ago. That the default position would be that any authorized projects would sunset after 4 years.
Right.
And there would have to be a proactive step to to keep it in place, to keep those items in place if there were a reason to.
And the proactive step would be a majority vote of whatever body
Common council. It
is
says here.
required or something,
Majority of the council.
council, okay.
Yep.
May continue an authorization.
And those are the only changes. There's gonna be a few things. You'll see some capitalized letters for defined terms in 10-18, 10-19, 10-20, 10-21 looks like it's eliminated, but it's not. It's the public hearing section for planning and zoning. For some reason, it was at the end of the chapter. I moved it into the section under planning and zoning.
I'm sorry,
So
Mr.
that's it.
Magnick, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but just can we go back to, I'm reading the one, what was it? It was B of the,
10-17.
yeah, I just went 2 pages long. Sorry, I hit page up, I lost it. Yeah, for the commission and common council, the language there, it's near the end of the red line. The common council may continue an authorization for project or projects. I don't understand, that language is kind of confusing me there. Does that make sense to you, that last sentence? Or am I just
The
misreading?
council may continue an authorization for a project or projects
Oh,
by
a
majority
project.
vote.
I didn't see A. Okay.
It
I
says
saw-
a project.
I thought
or
that was part of the
project.
strike through. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm good now. Thank you.
Okay,
Sorry to interrupt.
that's it on the budget language for me.
Okay, any more input questions on the budget portion?
I'm good.
Good
Okay.
discussion.
Thank you all for entertaining these, the suggestions. I appreciate it. And, you guys were thorough in your, evaluating these. So, I think it's a good result. I think they're good changes that'll make the city stronger financially and improve the process. So I greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, Jared, thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Jared.
Thanks, Jared.
Thank you.
Thank
You've
you.
been quite involved in the process, and I think it's gonna come up with a good outcome for us eventually, so thank you again.
All right. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Now you
Thank
can
you,
have
Jared.
that drink.
I know it.
So, do we want to, what I may suggest is that we go through the document from the beginning to the end, but since we're at the end of the document, can I raise an issue? This came up through the process, and you'll find it in action item number 2.9. In the last charter revision, this is section 11-4A. In the last charter revision, we created a provision that allows for this commission to exist. We wanted to make sure that after reorganizing the charter, that we came back within 2 years to address some of the political issues that we did not address in the prior charter revision process. And so we established a charter revision for 2020 for 2 years after the 2020 for 2 years after the provision. But we also then had a provision that was unusual, to have a charter revision every 5 years thereafter. The standard in the state is 10 years. And I have a feeling that people in Norwalk are feeling after the second charter revision that we're charter revisioned out in terms of mandatory charter revisions. And so I was going to recommend that we start the 10-year cycle. Now, keep in mind, the council can create a charter commission anytime it wants.
Right.
All this provision does is it makes it mandatory to establish a charter commission every 10 years.
10 years, right.
And that's a pretty decent cycle for these things. And so I just wanted to recommend that. And that's one of the items you'll see in action item number 2.
Yes, I completely agree with that. 10 years is a fair amount of time for the mandatory charter revisions, unless anyone feels differently. I think we leave that as it is currently.
If I were younger, I would advocate for 5, but it's
So would I.
keep those cards and letters coming in. But no,
Yeah, I think 10 years
And-
makes
Well,
10 years makes sense.
there's a real if you keep monkeying with something every 5 years, there's this less predictability, a lot of instability in that. I think that's just bad government. I think it makes sense to sit back
Exactly.
and think about it for a
Good point.
decade.
Good point.
I agree.
What was in place before the 2023 revision?
well, I don't know, went back 100 years.
Nothing. You did charters periodically, but there was no requirement to do them periodically.
Right. Like the
And-
Common Council
yeah.
can do it anytime they want, right? Which is
Yeah, exactly. And frankly, on the section we just addressed, if the Common Council is not happy with the dates that were established, I think I just told you, they can by action of the council amend the charter. It's actually an amendment of the charter to change the dates. They can't change the procedures, they can change the dates. Because you have a very early end date, which I'm always, when I tell people about it, they're all fascinated with the April 15th end date. So that's neither here nor there. So you want to go back to the beginning, Mr. Chair? Or...
Sure.
All right.
Yeah, I would just
Um,
propose that before we leave this part here, that we make a pact amongst ourselves that in 10 years, we all just get back together and see how much we've changed.
I mean,
As my grandmother would say, God willing. Yes.
Exactly.
So let's go to the beginning of the document and I'll walk you through it. As I told you, there will be in the definition section 2-2B 7 will be slightly modified. You'll see it in the next draft. 9 will be slightly modified, which is the capital improvement plan. Actually, I think that one's probably going to stay the same, but there may be a change. And the other change will be operating budget, which is 26. And I think that I'll flip around public official with operating budget, because somehow we got the alphabet out of order. So you'll see some minor changes with the consolidated definitions so that we don't have conflicting definitions in the definition section and in the budget section, so they'll be slightly modified. You'll see in 11, there is an errata, an internal reference change. I won't go through all of those changes, but as you go through the document, errata means I found a mistake and I fixed the mistake. But ultimately, you're going to be approving all those fixes. And in the resolution, I always make sure that I continue to have authority to fix mistakes throughout this entire process, which you will end up seeing in the second go around in July or August when this document comes back to you. There are no other substantive changes. They're all errata changes in the definitions. The minor change in the Board of Ethics, the Code of Ethics in section 2-3 B2, I'm going to make a change. The word otherwise somehow came out. So I'll fix that. That'll be an errata. I'm going to try to flip over the errata provisions
All right.
as we go through this. Come up with the first substantive change. All right, go to 3-4. Everybody there?
No,
Almost.
Getting there.
page 26.
thank you. That would work a lot better for most of us, you know.
Yeah, but mine's not the
Less
same.
confusing that way. Okay.
Okay.
Section 3-4A is simply the 5 council districts. We added language, I believe that you actually approved on April 15th, that says the district shall be created by ordinance following reapportionment as required by section 3-4A3 below. And then the transition provision which set the historical boundaries, is coming out. So I think the change that you had actually voted on was to make sure that I think Doug wanted to make sure that somebody could find these districts, and since they're created by ordinance, you'll find them in the Code of Ordinances. All right.
Uh-huh.
Can I,
All right. Let
yeah,
me go
no,
to.
I got a question. We were trying to figure out what the answer is to a question in our own particular party, because we have a member who lives in District A now. The transition doesn't happen technically till January 1st of 2026. His new district is in District C. But he runs in A. So he lives in A. So the question is, can he run in District C, even though he lives in A?
I think the
You would
answer,
have to run.
They moved the line, so the line where he used to move has moved. You know what I'm
He has
talking
to live,
about.
he has to live in the district.
And we've been back and forth, can he, how do we do this?
We
We're
asked
running him in
Stuart Rel-
district. Go ahead.
we asked Stuart Wells that question about the town committee and whether or not someone that was districted out of, let's say, District A and is now in C can still serve on the town committee in A. And the answer was that the town committees are, for instance, the town committees are a creation of Norwalk, they're not a creation of the state. And so they can remain in A even though they've been districted out. But if someone has been districted out and is now in C for purposes, I think, of running for common council, they have to run in their new district, not in the one that they currently can legally still be in if they're a member of the Republican town committee
Makes sense.
of that
Makes
district.
sense, but it just, no, but it's the way we kind of looked at it, but there's just no clear.
There's no transition
Yeah,
language.
there was nothing, it's
No,
beyond.
the ordinance has transition language.
Just to say
there's-
the ordinance have anything.
Yeah, you have to go look at the
Yeah,
ordinance
but
on.
Still on, still
Yeah.
fuzzy.
We played through it, just, it came up in discussion, I just want to make sure that I'm not missing something.
Doug,
But a
did you look
council
in
member
the,
who represents C now, if they're districted into D, they cannot run in C, the new C. And it's the new districts that will be up in
Right.
November, not the old districts.
Well, they're running in a district they're not a member of until after the election.
Well, no, they are a member
No,
of it now. They're
no.
just not a member of it for purposes of the RTC, which is a local, which is a creation of us. But they are now officially a member of District C for purposes.
Oh, okay, I thought
of-
we thought it didn't take place until after the election, okay.
And
Good.
we-
Glad you got
and
that.
the RTC charter covers what you're asking about.
Yeah, I mean, we're proceeding as if, I didn't know if there was any language that covered this in the charter when they switched the districts around or not, because it hadn't been.
No,
done.
the charter didn't change the districts. The
Okay,
ordinance
okay.
changed the districts. And the ordinance is very clear. The new districts take place for administrative purposes upon the adoption of the ordinance, so that the registrars can create the voting lists for the voting districts and name the new polling places and things like that. The council remains the same until after the election, then the new districts take hold on the council. That's where the alignment ultimately takes place, but for legal purposes, administratively, the districts are taking place. The only exception would be if you had a special election because of a vacancy of some sort, you would be going under the old district lines for the remainder of their term. So God willing, that will not be a
Because you're
problem.
filling that seat.
Yeah, in the current
Yes.
currency. Okay, the next change is in 4-3 A1, which is or A2, roll call vote. It's a very minor change. It's member instead of members. I don't know why I didn't do that as a Scrivener's change, but it is a minor change. So that's the current language. We had the word members, it should be member. All right, the next change is kind of a interesting little change. I didn't note where it came from, and that's why it may be a little confusing. In section, goodness,
Give us the page number.
I will in a second. Let me just, section 4-4, subsection, it's on mine, red line is page 48. I don't know if everybody else's will be. Subsection C,
I'm sorry,
Three.
4-4, Steve?
48. It's the appeals provision under the historical powers of the Common Council.
What page?
Page 44.
Yeah, mine is 48 for whatever reasons, because I think I have, I don't know why, but it is. And what this section is, this is one of those special, this is one of those Article 14 sections that was moved forward because, or Article 13-4, because this section deals with the assessment that you charge people, or that you pay people when you take land from them. And this is the appeals process, and the Corp Counsel's office thought it made sense to keep it and move it into the body of the document. That's what subsection C is all about.
46.
And this really is, let me tell you what action item this is, because I didn't note it. Should be. It's not noted. Hold on. It's action item, nope. Right there. Oh, action item, number 7, assessment appeals. So if you're looking at the action items, that's what that one is. And they just thought that it made sense to leave this in the body of the document. And that's why it's all there. It's current charter language, but it consolidates it with the historic powers of the council. The next change you're going to see is one that you actually approve, 4-7C, which on my is page 50. And this was simply the compensation section. And I'm going to propose, you'll see it in the next cleanup of this, that where it says the compensation of all officers and employees of the city of Norwalk shall be fixed by the council in accordance with applicable collective bargaining agreements. I'm going to add the term "if any," because there may be some executive employees that do not have a collective bargaining agreement, and the council approves the management pay plan.
All right.
All right. Next substantive change is just to reiterate one that you approved on April 1st. Sounds like a joke, but it's not. It's April 1st. It's 4-10.
4- what? 8.
4-10A. This is where you reduce the petition requirements from 8% to 4%. And so there's changes in A, and then you reduce the electors in B from 5 to 4. And that those changes are carried through in C and in D as well. So those are changes that you approved already. Also had changes in subsection G of that language, which is again the 8 to the 4. Um, and
PDF packet, that's page 67.
I'm sorry.
I was just, if anybody had the PDF packet that was sent, that's page
Oh, okay.
67.
Okay. Yeah, I'm working from a hard copy, so I apologize. Our
No.
numbers are a little different. The next substantive change is let me just finalize in my head section 6-3, which is in action item 2. We've concluded that we're not touching constables. Am I correct on that? We're leaving that language intact.
I am almost entirely certain that we were gonna leave that alone. I think, we can double check before we vote on it with Rick, because I think he had the kind of institutional working knowledge of what the constables do, but I believe we concluded that they were still doing enough that it warranted leaving alone in the chart.
And most of their work is directed by an attorney's office anyway.
Okay. The next change is in 7-1 B. There will be a minor correction in one where it has that ladder, it's the ladder of. And what subsection 2 is, and this is action item 2.4. And by the way, B1 is something that you guys approved on April 15th, which is you cannot be less than 2 years, no more than 4 years for terms of office for members of boards and commissions. In 2, what we did is we didn't change the substance of this at all, but instead of, when you establish a board or commission by ordinance, instead of addressing each of these issues in ordinance, you have to address these issues, whether it's in the ordinance or not. You need to have the appointment of a chair, keeping of records. You'll see that I took out compliance with minority party representation because it's already in the section, so it was redundant. If you take a look at subsection 7, it's already stated there. So all boards and commissions have to be compliant with minority party representation. And then subsection D is.
Can I ask you a question about that? I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
The
Yep.
Board of Education is a board, but they're not subject to the minimum.
These are appointed boards.
Okay, appointed boards. Okay, so.
These are appointed boards and commissions. And the council is not covered by this either. And minor change in basically the rules for frequency of meetings, attendance have to be established by a rule of the board or commission unless otherwise set forth by the ordinances. So the council may decide they want to establish a citywide standard. But if there's no citywide standard, you need to establish it. If you want to enforce one of the provisions of the charter that allows for removal is failure to attend meetings. So you have to make sure you establish policies dealing with that issue. Minor change in 6, I had the term each clerk is required. I don't know that every board or commission has a clerk, so it's going to be each board or commission is required to keep a complete record, blah, 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 blah. And however they work that out, that's what they will do. The next section is in subsection E of that section, which is on mine, page 77. It's the removal provision.
76 for us, right?
89 on the PDF.
And this is in action item 2.5. Basically says persistent absence is defined by ordinance or in the absence of an ordinance by the rules of the board or commission. That's the parallel to the language I just referred you to in the body of the document. On 7-2 3, which is on mine, page 79, somebody,
78 for us here.
91 in the packet.
this is where we create the model for each of the districts having representation on the Board of Estimate and Taxation. And it works out pretty well, because right now I believe there are 2 people from District A, and one of them is up next year. And so B, D, and E will be represented in the next appointment cycle, commencing on the 1st of February. Remember, we approved this on April 15th. And then A, C, and whatever district gets a second member would be in the second cycle for your term of February of 2028. So that's the way it aligns. That's the way it worked out. It worked out well, actually. I'm reordering the letters. I had B, E, and D mainly because I just took them as they were. It's B, D, and E. You'll see that minor change next week.
I like bed.
I don't like it.
Well, I could go back to bed if you want. I mean, I could.
No, we argued before.
It's too
First day of
early,
February.
Steve, it's too
That
early.
means 30 days serving, going into almost establishing reports, etc. Transition dates. It should run with the term with the mayor.
You guys made a decision. Do you want to change the decision? This is not me. This was a decision you
voted
made
on
on
that.
April 15th. You voted on it.
I know.
And we decided
I
that
mean,
we decided the mayor needed a month to get his ducks in a row and and for the council to vote and the whole thing. And
Right.
I think that's why we decided to on that date.
Yep.
Right, and I think what we had discussed was that the mayor during the transition period can identify his or her appointments for whichever district it's gonna be. And that, those people can get up to speed and be ready to go on February 1st, but the idea was that a mayor can't appoint someone day one without approval. Right, I mean, it has to be approved, so that's why we had to have it start a little later. Otherwise, you'd have to call a special meeting of,
No, it could have the second Tuesday of the fourth Tuesday of the month.
but doesn't that get you to like January 20 something anyway?
Good.
So it's just
But
like
there's
another,
no rule either. They couldn't call a special meeting of the council. Been done before.
Your call. This is adopted, so
I know.
I'm just.
Just for sake of
I'm
discussion,
expressing myself, I'm trying to think if you're mayor. All right, and now I inherited somebody else's Board of Estimate and Taxation, where before underneath the old rules, when you took over the third Tuesday of the month after the election, on the first Tuesday.
But there's no real budget. The budget season starts.
But you're working on it. You
In
gotta
March,
be working on it by then.
Well,
According to
that's right. Yeah, the meetings really start in March, more or less, right? Or the end of February. I don't think there's, and that's the big ticket item when a mayor takes office, right? I don't think anything really happens in January. Except
Also,
that the finance
the
department is working behind the scenes, but the Board of Estimate doesn't do anything.
The new mayors even,
the language says, the term shall commence on the first day of February, but that doesn't mean that the incoming mayor is not, deciding who he wants before that time, to get his ducks in a row. That's not saying that the mayor begins.
All right, I'll use this, if I'm appointing, if a mayor wants to appoint a fire commissioner, same timeline?
no, they're coterminous.
Hmm?
We fix that at the same time. They're coterminous. Fire and police are coterminous with the mayor.
Yeah, but now, don't they require council approval now?
Yeah, they gotta be approved by the council, but they're coterminous
Okay,
with the
well, the
mayor.
council doesn't meet until, here we go, we got the same situation.
But they don't have terms. The Board of Estimate has a fixed term. I thought I thought you had this debate. They had a fixed term,
Yes,
and that makes them different than a coterminous member. And the mayor only gets to appoint half of the Board of Estimate when he or she comes in, because the other members
no,
are there
I
for
got that,
another
I'm
2
with
years.
you on that, but what I'm bringing up is like you take a fire commission, which was changed. And it requires council approval. All right, it doesn't have a February 1st date, start date, why wouldn't you have them all the same? I didn't say, I'm saying, if there are 4 appointments up this year for the Board of Investment Taxation, why wouldn't, needing council approval, why wouldn't it follow the same rules?
Because they don't have a fixed term of office. The other members have a
Yeah, they
fixed
do.
term of office of 4 years.
Right.
And that's different than coterminous. It's a different concept.
Right.
Well, but
And I
I'm still
thought
saying
you-
it's still a mayor council appointment, I'm trying to get to the big picture.
But
It's a
here's the
mayor
bottom line.
council appointment.
But I
Here's-
thought
here's
this
the
was
bottom-
resolved. I mean, I'm sitting
Yeah,
here.
here's the bottom line. The bottom
I thought
line is
this
that
was
we had this
resolved.
discussion and all of this was raised and we took a vote and this is where we ended up.
And we should stay where we're at.
You're muted, Joe.
I think Joe's trying to say something, but she's.
Joe, you're muted.
She's muted.
Unmute yourself,
My,
Joe.
my point being, I'm sorry that I feel like there's a lot that has been rolled up into here that, we've discussed, but not voted on.
Well, we
This was
I
voted.
feel like
voted
there's a
on.
lot in here that we've discussed that has not necessarily been voted on.
We
did
This
vote
was
on this
voted
item.
on April 15th. It was
We
voted on.
voted on this part before, and the discussion was the only way around this is you would have to say, you have to call a special session of the of the common council the day the mayor gets elected for them to vote on the appointment. That is the only way around this. And
But the mayor's not,
I don't think that makes sense, which is why
I'm
we
not
didn't.
referring to this specifically. I'm referring to, there's a lot in here that, we've discussed, but haven't really.
I think we took a
Voted on.
consensus on stuff that we didn't vote on. I don't think that Steve has done anything that we haven't
No,
had at least a consensus about.
Yeah,
correct.
this
The
is just a
the
draft.
vote will be at the next meeting, which is why we're discussing all this tonight. We decided not to vote on it because we're missing 2 members. And we wanted to have tonight as the opportunity to discuss these things, which is what we've been doing for the last, whatever, hour, 45 minutes. So people can read through this. If there's any questions, maybe
Bring it up next week.
bring it up next week, but the idea is to resolve all this now so that we don't have to be revisiting some of these things when we do vote on it. We are not voting on any of this stuff tonight.
When the cake is baked.
Yeah, so, all right, Steve, do you want to keep going?
sure. The next changes are in the police commission in subsection B, which is page 81, and the fire commission, which is C on page 85. Right now, the charter was silent, and you voted to confirm that the practices that they serve coterminously with the mayor, subject to approval by the common council.
The language says conterminously, is that, the word that?
It should be coterminously.
Okay. Also,
I have found that the word function fixes that coterminous to conterminous, and I didn't notice. it.
conterminous
Okay.
is
I
a
think
word.
I looked that up and it is a word.
No, I realize it's a
It is a
word,
word.
but no, it's coterminous.
Cause I'm like, what is
coterminous.
conterminous? Yeah.
No, it is coterminous. Sorry, I didn't catch that. All right, the next proposed change is, it's a minor one that I picked up in 8-2, which is page 92. And this is in action item number 2.6. I don't believe that the term unclassified is used in Norwalk. I was told that at least, so I took the word unclassified out.
Okay.
It describes the specific employees, so it doesn't make any difference what the classification is because they're clearly identified.
Okay.
The next change is bizarre little change in subsection G, which is on page 96. And it's action item 2.7. This deals with appointees of the council. It's just an oath for appointees of the council. I think that they get to appoint some members of the ethics board. I don't know why there's a separate oath, but that's been in your charter. And I just cleaned up the language a little bit.
All right.
Say the section again, please.
That's
Page 96 in the
subsection,
printed document.
yeah, it's
Subsection G.
8-2G.
109 in the PDF packet.
It's the appointed officer oath.
In 8-3B, and this is action item number 2.8 on my page 97. Pages in the other document.
Is this
It probably, is it the full-time positions?
8-3B, which is under Corp Counsel, the law
Oh,
department.
Sorry,
PDF page 110.
Deleting the language subject to approval of the Board of Estimate and Taxation. I've been told that they don't play a role in the compensation of the attorneys or any employees in the management pay plan. That's a council approved matter. The council determines the number of employees, qualifications, et cetera, et cetera. So that language would come out. 8-4 at the next meeting, I will have language. I just got it from Jared the end of last week. I haven't had a chance to make the changes, but there will be some language modifications in 8-4. 8-4C, subsection 2. All of this new language, 2 and 3, on page 100 of my document, subsection C, 2. Jim, what section?
Is this duties and responsibilities under that?
Historical provisions pertaining to the controller.
Oh, okay, that's page 113.
It's under duties and responsibilities is the next section.
PDF page 113.
All of this language, and I'm somewhat disappointed that it's here, is from the back of the document, chapter 14, article 14. I don't think we have time to fix it now, but I'm hoping that when we get to the council, I requested today that we have an opportunity to sit down with some of these department heads and go through this language, because I think a lot of it isn't necessary. But to keep moving along and getting rid of Article 14, we'll move it to the front of the document. I think that some of this could be constraining on a controller, and you may want to have, and most of this authority exists. This is not authority that is unique to Norwalk. So you may see, when this comes back from the council, you may see a modification of this section, but this is simply moving the section from Article 14 into the body of the document. It eliminates the historical transition provision, and that's the story on that section. The next one, again, I'm having an issue. I'm trying to get it resolved before we get into it. This is on subsection D, the purchasing agent. You'll see that the historical trend, and this is on my page 102, so it's the next page that Jim was on a moment ago.
115 in the PDF packet.
You'll see that the historical transition provision is still there. There's language that really needs to be eliminated because it's contrary to the to other language, and I won't say who, but somebody wants to hedge their bets. Oh, why don't we just do belt and suspenders? And I'm trying to get them to make a choice. and so that we don't have the same problem we have in this previous section where we have language that just doesn't make any sense to include in the charter. So you'll see, hopefully, the fruits of my labors at our next meeting. The next section is subsection E. Jim, that'll be the next page, my page 103.
116 in the PDF packet.
All right, on this one, the tax collector actually did go through the section, and you'll see that the historical transition provision is eliminated and that there's two new sections dealing with public improvement liens and building removal. They felt that those were unique authorities and powers that should remain in the charter, and that's exactly what I was hoping that they would do, that they would look at it critically, and they decided that those two provisions, which are currently in the charter, in the back section of the charter, should be put in the tax collector section of the charter. So that's what those two sections are. And that's action item number 3. Again, if you move forward to 8-7, which is page 106 on mine, and it's really,
PDF 119 PDF packet.
if you go, yeah, if you flip the page, you'll see the historic transition provisions are out. This is dealing with the operations, public works. Again, far too much language from 14 has been moved here. And my hope is that we will thin this language out when it goes to the council and bring it back to you with a recommendation to narrow the language down. I mean, it's 3 pages of language, most of which is really covered by the Home Rule Act. And so I'll have to have a sit down with them during that process. And so you may see this section again when we come back to the council, to the commission, after the council reviews it. The next change. Oh, that's it, guys. That's it. That's it. So I think we covered everything.
Wow.
So take a look at it, and if there are any questions, if Tyler doesn't mind, send emails out to Tyler, and I'll look at and to me, and I'll look at them. So if we can answer questions before next meeting, I'll be happy to do so.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, and I think it'll help us kind of move through this officially at our next meeting. So I wanted to briefly touch on that. So the May 6th meeting is likely going to need to move. That is, I think it's a conflict for Steve. It's a conflict for me as well. So we need to come up with a date there. I don't want to try to come up with a date at this very moment, because I don't have my schedule in front of me, and I don't know.
I
if
don't know
everybody
why I
else does.
have the 13th and the 13th and the 27th in.
So I think they get to be more frequent, Jim. So we had the 6th that's going to have to move. The other one that Esther asked me to bring up was the 13th.
Okay.
Which is, it's gonna be a conflict because the chambers are not available. So we're gonna perhaps look at either Monday, the 12th, or Thursday, the 15th. I think Monday might be good for me, but again, I'll look and confirm, my work schedule.
I can't do, I told you, I have a trial the next day, so Monday the 12th would be a really
Monday was
good
that,
day.
okay, so it might be the 15th.
The 15th would work for me.
Okay, so
And-
5-6 has to move. 5-13 has to move. Potentially to 5-15, but we'll confirm that.
Start.
I'm available if we can on the meeting for the 5th, if we could do the 6th, if we could do the 5th or the 7th, I'm available.
I'm sorry,
that
that was
day.
the one, Steve. The 6th, we're looking at maybe the 5th, which is a Monday. That's the
Monday or the Wednesday, the 5th or the
Oh.
7th.
Wednesday I'm unavailable, but Monday could work.
Monday's not good for me.
Oh,
Okay, well, I'll send something out. I'll send something out and we'll see what works for the
Yeah, well,
majority.
yeah, just send us the dates, we'll respond.
Okay, and then what was the last thing? It was those
Well, we gotta
dates.
do the public hearing because keep in mind, your report is due on the 30th.
Yeah, so
And
the
we have
public
a
hearing, I
meeting
think, was
scheduled for
gonna
the
be
27th.
the 20-something was gonna be the public hearing.
On a Tuesday,
The
the
20th.
27th?
27th, a Tuesday? That's the day right after Memorial Day.
Right, correct.
No, it's Thursday, the 27th, I think.
In May?
May is
May?
Tuesday.
It's Tuesday.
May
It's Tuesday, the
27th is
27th.
Tuesday.
Yeah. But the
What-
hearing, the public hearing was supposed to be Tuesday, the 20th, I had.
I have the
Tentatively.
20th booked for a meeting. I mean, do we want to use that as the public hearing? I don't see any reason not to.
Fine,
And we're gonna need a meeting or two before that, by the way, guys.
right.
Yeah, so we're looking at potentially the 5th and the 15th. We'll confirm. The 20th would then be the public hearing.
Right.
And then we meet again on the 27th, right?
And then we report it out on the 30th. Good. All right, that works.
The 5th, May 5th is not good for me.
And it's no good for me.
Well, I'll send something out
Okay.
and we'll figure out
Yeah.
what it's gonna be.
15th is not good for me either. 15th,
We go to
but
the
whatever,
same Cinco de
we'll-
Mayo celebration.
Attorney Mendick,
Coming back.
are we allowed, if we're not here to vote, are we allowed to have a proxy vote?
No,
I
but
didn't-
you can zoom in or unless you're on SpaceX or something.
How did you know?
I just figured.
No.
It's a quick up and down.
11 minutes here, 11 minutes there.
That open house chamber.
You can tell me how you're gonna vote, Carl. I'll vote twice.
Ed, we'll give Ed 2 votes.
Once
So,
we-
I might surprise you, Ed.
guys, so I'll send something out on the schedule. The last thing I just wanted to bring up quickly because we'd already discussed it, but I was able to talk to Moina about the library director and she gave me a brief bit of background, which was that there had been no reference to the library director in the prior charter revision. And so we had we put that in there with the rest of it just so that it wasn't left out. But you know, I am sympathetic to her desire to have that a little more nuanced than it currently is. So I will talk to Steve and look at potential language for that. That would be a maybe distilled version of what she had suggested in her correspondence to the commission and at the public hearing. I do want to take a look at that. So that'll be something that perhaps we could have Steve incorporate into the updated draft text that we'll get. So that's everything. It is 8:30. I think we covered a lot of ground.
Did you mention the term of office issue?
The 4-year term.
Before your term, yeah.
The 4-year term, so that was something else that we had kind of brought up from the table. You know, I think what we had discussed was potentially looking at the 4-year term for mayor beginning in the 2029 election. So something to think about, something to discuss at the next meeting. It is something that we kind of left unaddressed when we did the last charter revision in 2022-23. I think the expectation when we did that was that we were going to address it this time around, and so I would like to address it this time around. So I'll try to get that on the agenda for our next meeting because we're running out of time, and I'd like to discuss it before the public hearing for sure. So that will be something that'll be in there as well as the library, and we'll sort out the dates.
I thought the library was an ordinance issue more than.
There, two of the things were an
Became a charter.
ordinance issue, but it
Became a charter
8.2, we have it in the list of department heads. So I think what they're looking for is just to add like a 1-sentence thing that says, you know, in consultation, the mayor will appoint that person in consultation with the library. Just to formalize.
Yeah,
what-
I'm still not,
Procedure, all right, but it's kind of.
I'm still not clear, Tyler, on what the end result of that's all about. I don't know if she'll tell you or if we can find out, but
I think the idea, Carl, is to align it with existing practice and then best practice throughout the state where the library board has some say in the decision rather than the mayor just appointing the person without consulting with the board.
okay.
I think
I just know
it
that
is a little unique as opposed to some of the other department heads.
Yeah, I just
So-
know in the last one, when we put all this together, our chairman, that was a third rail. We didn't even touch it.
Yeah, well, we'll take a look at it this time and see if we can come up with something that makes sense and, you know, if we hear a public outcry that people do not want the mayor to consult with the library board before making the selection of the director, then we will maybe take it out.
You're putting something in the charter, basically, that somebody can go up to and say, cool, what do people think? Nothing. Okay, we're done.
All
Put
right,
that in the charter.
do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor? All right, thank you guys, be in touch soon.
Good night.